In this video, we're going to conduct a thought experiment. We're going to suppose that a few simple things are true and see where that ends up taking us. The statements we're going to assume as being true will all be as close to factual as they can possibly be given the ambiguous subject matter of the video. By the end, we'll have made some very interesting statements about video games and Let's Plays, and because the assumptions we made to get there were so simple, it will all act as what I think is a pretty convincing argument for their validity. So let's get started. I'm going to kick things off by immediately losing a chunk of my audience. I can do this by asking a simple question. Ready for it? What is art? If you exited out just now, you were well justified in doing so. This is a bullshit question. It's a bullshit question because to answer it, to say that art is specifically anything at all, imposes a strict limit on the set of things that can be called art, effectively putting a cap on the possible range of human expression. Nobody wants that. However, if we don't answer this question, how will we know when something is art? Is everything art? Are you art? Is my cat art? I think most of us will agree that while anything can be art, not everything is art. So even though this is a bullshit question, there is a discussion to be had here. Let's try approaching this from the standpoint of set theory. There's nothing wrong with defining a set that consists of all of the art. That's what makes set theory so powerful. You can always declare any set you want with only one very technical exception. So let's do that. Let's define the set of all art and call that set A. What we said at the start that we can't do is define this set based on some concrete logical definition of what art is. However, we can apply concrete definitions to other sets of things, and then we can agree that those sets are contained in the set of all art. That is, I'll define a set X, and then make the claim that everything in X is also in A. This way, we can know clearly when something is art without explicitly defining and thus limiting what art can be. This leads us to the first claim of the thought experiment. I'm going to define a set, and we're going to suppose that everything in this set is art. The set of things that I'm going to define is the set of all narratives. And by narratives, I'm referring to any account of connected events which is delivered to consumers as a package. This is a very broad-ranging set, but I think that it's a valid one to pick. Wikipedia seems to agree with me, and my definition was yanked straight out of the Oxford English Dictionary. So, all narratives are art. Now let's make a few claims about narratives. First is an easy one. All narratives have a creator. Simple enough. My next claim is going to be the closest to controversial of the entire video, since to those more knowledgeable about narratives it could come off as a tiny bit reductive. Not reductive enough to endanger the points I'm going to make, mind you, just enough that I felt like I should acknowledge it. The claim is that the set of all narratives can be neatly partitioned into three broad categories based on their style of delivery. Category 1 is the first-person narrative. In a first-person narrative, the creator of the work is directly involved in the events being presented, and can even play a role in how those events turn out. The consumer is presented these events but has no part in them. Category 2 is the third-person narrative. In a third-person narrative, the creator is disconnected from the events, playing the role of an omniscient, godlike narrator, and delivers the events to the consumer in a way that is assumed to be objective while the consumer observes. Before we move on to Category 3, I want to point two things out. First, note that I'm being careful to define these categories in their most general case, so that they can be applied to any type of narrative imaginable. Applied to, say, books, these definitions will satisfy the conditions you'd expect them to, but they can also be applied to movies, plays, and anything else satisfying my definition of narrative. Second, let's try to identify where the distinction lies between categories 1 and 2. You could take the easy route and just answer with the word perspective, but my answer would be that the distinction lies in the relationship between the consumer and the creator. In any narrative, the creator needs to deliver events to the consumer, and the narrative perspective is the way in which this is accomplished. Each of these narrative styles has advantages and disadvantages. The primary advantage that a first-person narrative has is that it can be used to more naturally form an intimate relationship between the creator and the consumer. The primary advantage of the third-person narrative is that it allows the consumer to disregard the creator entirely, which can eliminate background noise and make complicated or multi-layered events easier for the consumer to digest. Now let's consider Category 3. Category 3 is the second-person narrative. In the second-person narrative, the consumer is delivered events through their own involvement, i.e. they are in some form or another being made an active participant in the creator's work. Until very recently, the selection of mediums with which to deliver a narrative have not allowed for the second-person narrative to be explored very much. In the case of books, the most effective way to accomplish this would be the choose-your-own-adventure style, which, while cool in theory, is a lot of work to pull off, and its potential returns diminish exponentially since the author has to consistently write more and more branching paths for the reader, each one potentially derailing the author more and more from whatever artistic vision they had in the first place. Really, their only other method of accomplishing this is to involve the reader forcibly. That is, to address the reader directly with frequent use of the word you with statements such as, you go down this hallway, you think this, you say this, etc. This is generally a really terrible idea, because it's inherently presumptuous of the author to think that they know what the reader will do, think, or say, and as a consequence, this style will in most cases only serve to build up animosity between the author and reader very quickly. In the case of plays, getting the audience involved isn't unheard of, but if taken too far can lead to all sorts of silliness, and in the case of movies, the second-person narrative is largely impossible with very few exceptions. This is all to say that the second-person narrative has historically been largely unexplored as a potential option for narrative delivery. It's hard to even say what distinct advantages a second-person narrative can have, because this particular category is still so early in its development. I think you can guess why second-person narratives are suddenly getting more and more viable. Video games are why. I might even be a little more general and say that interactive electronic entertainment as a whole is why, but I'll save that argument for my Homestuck series. So, by our definition, are video games narratives? Absolutely. Events are unfolding to a consumer, and at absolute minimum these events are connected by the player's own decision-making in what buttons they press, so there is no ambiguity here. I want to be perfectly clear that this is not something we are assuming. Within the context of our thought experiment, this is the first concrete result. If you agree with my assumption that all narratives are art, and you agree with my definition of narrative, then as a logical consequence, you have to agree that all video games are art. And if you agree with my definitions of the three narrative perspectives, then equally concrete is the result that all video games fall into the third category. Video games are second-person narratives in that you are actually playing the game and delivered events through your own input. No longer is it presumptuous or even necessary to tell the consumer what they are going to say or do, because that decision can simply be left to the players themselves. With the advent of video games, the barriers keeping artists out of the second-person narrative slice of the pie have been officially torn down, and an entire new frontier of creative potential lies right in front of us, just waiting to be explored. This is where the push for video games to be considered art comes from, and it's also why people are so damn excited and vocal about it. Hopefully you can understand where their excitement comes from now, and maybe you can even share some of it yourself if you didn't already. So, video games are second-person narratives, and therefore works of art. Next, let's consider Let's Plays. Let's Plays have become wildly popular in the last 2 years. I'm going to consider a Let's Play to be literally any activity in which a viewer watches someone else play a game. I'm not even going to require that commentary be provided by the player. This is my thought experiment, and I can define things however the fuck I want, and that's how I'm doing it. So here's the big question. Are Let's Plays art? If I had started the video off by asking this question, I think that many would have answered with a very resounding no. But now we have a concrete way to decide this. Are Let's Plays narratives? Absolutely. They are packaged accounts of connected events presented to a consumer. But are they second-person narratives? No. When someone makes a Let's Play, they are taking a second-person narrative, i.e. a video game, and making out of it a transformative work. And that transformative work is a first-person narrative. Don't believe me? Let's rewind the video to how I define first-person narratives. In a first-person narrative, the creator of the work is directly involved in the events being presented, and can even play a role in how those events turn out. The consumer is presented these events but has no part in them. See? Did I just blow your mind? I think I did, because when I reached this conclusion, I blew my own mind. I don't even particularly like Let's Plays. In fact, something about them irks me on a basic level. Why would one ever prefer watching a game over playing it themselves, is the question that gets thrown around a lot, sometimes even by me. But because of our thought experiment, we now have an answer to that question as well. People watch Let's Plays instead of playing a game because the act of playing the game is the act of consuming a completely different work of art than watching a Let's Play. Despite the same game being used in both cases, these things are distinct on a fundamental level and are borderline incomparable with each other. They are separate works. The narrative pull of a Let's Play comes from the relationship between the viewer and the player. Viewers become emotionally attached to certain personalities. They watch those personalities develop and get to know them better through watching them play different games and seeing how they react to different stimuli. In this way, Let's Plays are taking full advantage of the potential that a first-person narrative has, and I think this is where their wide-ranging appeal comes from. So our thought experiment has reached a rather interesting conclusion. Let's Plays are first-person narratives and are therefore works of art, and as such deserve the exact same treatment that all other works of art receive. However, The viewers of a Let's Play need to acknowledge something themselves. They need to acknowledge that watching a Let's Play is not at all the same activity as playing a game. When an artist makes a Let's Play out of a game, they're adding at the cost of subtracting. What are gained are all the advantages of a first-person narrative, which I already stated. But the loss is whatever potential engagement the game had as a second-person narrative. This means that if you've already seen a Let's Play of a game prior to playing it yourself, then there's the potential for a diminished experience with the game's systems along with its audio and visuals. This is because in addition to seeing and hearing the game, you've also witnessed Let's Players' reactions to the game, which without a doubt will have an influence on your own reactions should you play it. All this is to say that even though a game and a Let's Play of a game are separate and distinct artistic works, the order in which one consumes them can have a drastic impact on one's experiences with them. Playing a game before watching a Let's Play of that game might not have any impact on the quality of your experience with either, but watching a Let's Play before playing a game most certainly does. And even if all one does is watch the Let's Play, failure to acknowledge this distinction could lead, and already has led, large groups of people to make some very unfair, overhyped, or downright strange judgment calls on the quality of some games. I need only mention the word simulator to illustrate my point here, and could probably make an entire video as long as this one, just listing the other examples one by one. One could argue that watching Let's Plays are popular because watching them is less effort than playing a game, and that is sort of true, but it is not necessarily because you're worse at the game or that it takes more effort to play somehow. It's possible to watch a Let's Play just as attentively as you might play a game. I think that a major reason people say that watching Let's Plays takes less effort is because first-person narratives are more familiar and well understood to us as artistic mediums than second-person narratives. It's easy to leave a Let's Play and have the impression that you digested it as much as you needed to in order to get the full experience, and that's because your brain knows how to do that. You're trained how to do that by your English classes, by television shows and movies you've watched, by books you've read, hell, even by listening to your friends talk to you about their personal lives. On the flip side, the artistic merit of video games is harder to think about because video games are still a relatively new medium. It's easy to play a game and miss the narrative purpose of its mechanics if you don't know what to look for. It's easy to leave Dark Souls thinking that it was hard and frustrating for no reason without considering how that punishing death system was meant to imbue the player with a sense of dread, and how the repeated deaths and the player's subsequent defiance in the face of those deaths imbue a sense of struggle and determination against the harsh and unforgiving callousness of nature. It's easy to rage quit XCOM after one of your party members dies permanently to a random RNG crit, dismissing this as random bullshit without pausing to consider the fact that the tension and fear that this is a possibility created was the primary factor which led to the player's emotional attachment to that dead unit in the first place. It's easy to view Grow Home as nothing more than a glorified tech demo with not enough content to warrant its price tag, without realizing that its simplistic presentation and wonky climbing mechanics are there intentionally and meant to instill a nostalgic sense of wonderment and excitement at the prospect of learning how to climb, one that emulates feelings that the players themselves had long ago exploring the playground as a child for the first time. To many people, these things are easy to miss, but they don't have to be. The ability to analyze any piece of artwork is an acquired skill, and like any other skill, can only be developed through first-hand exposure. But none of this is to say that Let's Plays can't potentially help with this. Talking about games and watching how others react to games can be a fantastic resource if used right. As an example, Matthew Matosis recently made an absolutely astonishing 6-hour-long dissection of the original Dark Souls, which helped me appreciate the game on a level that I never could have before, but I never would have been able to fully appreciate Matthew's observations on the game if I hadn't played it myself first. So the next time you find yourself starting to watch a Let's Play of a game which looks intriguing to you, consider, just for a minute, turning off the video, buying the game, and playing it to see for yourself what makes it special. Thanks for watching.